Hi, I'm Sara with Bob Clements International, and today we are talking about all things labor rate. Yes, that's right. Now, I don't know how you feel when I say the words labor rate. Maybe you're at the place you go, Sara, I woke up this morning and all I wanted to do was talk about labor rates. Well, then you're in the right place. Maybe you woke up and you said, Sara, my service department is a dumpster fire, and that's the last thing I want to talk about. Regardless of where you are on that spectrum, we are going to give you some specific things you can do to move your service department towards profitability through your labor rate. So during this time, we're going to walk through why labor rates are important, how you set them, and when you roll them out. Okay, so let's talk about why they're important. There's a whole bunch of reasons why your labor rate is critically important to the health of your dealership, but two specific ones I want to talk about. Number one, our labor rate determines how much we can pay technicians. Yes, that's right. That's how you know how much you can pay a technician. It's not some magical formula. It's literally 30% of whatever your posted labor rate is. That's what you can pay a technician. So let's say that our posted labor rate was $100 an hour. We could pay an A-level technician $30 an hour. Do you see how that works? It's so simple. Even a girl from Missouri can do it. The second thing that's so critically important about our labor rate and why it matters in our dealership is because the profitability of your service department is second to none inside your dealership. Now, I know that you may be, Sara, you don't know what it's like inside of my dealership. Listen, I do know. I have seen thousands of service departments been able to be turned around, but your labor rate will only continue to amplify a positive service department. So if we've got processes in place and we're going through our service department consistently and regularly, your posted labor rate, if it's set right, will just continue to move you towards profitability with it. So that's the second reason, in my opinion, why it's so important. So how do you set your labor rate? Like I mentioned before, we set our labor rate based on what it costs us to get an A-level technician, because we can set aside 30% of our posted labor rate for an A-level technician. Now, here's how you don't set it. I don't want you to pick up the phone and call the dealership down the road that looks just like you, sells the same things you do or similar, and ask them what their labor rate is, because here's what happens. They'll tell you their labor rate. They'll call the dealership down the road, they'll call you, and you'll be in this cycle of labor rate after labor rate, and everybody says the same. We call that, my friends, pooling ignorance. We don't want that. We need to look outside of our pool of ignorance to people who actually have a better understanding of what our labor rate should be. And so we look to auto dealerships. Why in the world would we look to auto dealerships to set our labor rate? Because Ford a few years ago spent close to $20 million to determine what the labor rate should be in each county of the United States. Yeah, that's right. So unless you have a quick 20 mil laying around, you say, I like to do my own market research, then let's lean into Ford's research. Now, we're gonna call the local Ford dealership and say, hey, what is your labor rate? Because they set their labor rate based on the same thing you set your labor rate on, what it costs to get an A-level technician. Now, we're gonna call them and they may tell you it's $150 an hour. Typically, what we do is we're about 10% less than what the local Ford dealership is. Now, you need to feel it out just a little bit to make sure it's right for your community, but that's typically the rule of thumb. Let me give you an example. I have a dealership in San Francisco, and they found that it costs them over $60 an hour to get an A-level technician in their area. So they were like, okay, is this real? Like, is this right? They called the local Ford dealership out there and they said, yes, like this is what we're having to pay to, because we knew that based on what the labor rate was. And so this dealership had to set their labor rate over $200 an hour so that they could afford an A-level technician. But this was continued to be proven by the fact that the Ford dealership was doing the same. Okay, so we're gonna set it based on what it cost us to get an A-level technician. We're not gonna call other dealerships just like us, but we're gonna call the auto dealerships and ask them what it is that their labor rate is, and then we're typically gonna be about 10% less. Finally, when do you roll out your new labor rate? Well, in this current environment that we're in right now, most of our dealers in our Dealer Success Group programs have incrementally been increasing their labor rate every 30, 60, and 90 days because of inflation. I know, big conversation, the big elephant in the room. And so there have been micro adjustments every 30, 60, and 90 days for our Dealer Success Group members. But if you're looking to make a bigger change to your posted labor rate, I would encourage you to do it in the middle of season or at the beginning of season, where people aren't as concerned about how much it costs, but more concerned about when they can get it back. That, my friends, is how we set our posted labor rate and how we roll it out.